Welcome to another season of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. This program is brought to you by Right Career Fit. Listen and learn, and remember to have that very important career conversation with a career professional.
Adaptation and curiosity and being willing to learn new things. When you're either starting something or working with someone saying, I don't know yet, but I will know. So I have 3 teenagers, right? So I've got a sophomore, senior, and a freshman in college. Their world is very different than my world. And frankly, a lot of their education, which is a good exercise for the mind, is still industrial age education. The real key is learning storytelling, because the rest of your life is about telling a convincing story.
Thank you for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. I am Hoda, your host. I look forward to another season of career chats with international professionals who will inspire you to take your journey to the next level. My guest today is Roy Vella. Roy is a well-known digital strategy expert, professional speaker, and independent non-executive director, advisor, and consultant to enterprises large and small. As a resourceful Stanford JD MBA and US UK citizen, Roy has proven complex problem-solving skills and global execution, delivering high-growth, digitally driven teams. He runs a management consultancy, providing strategic advice and commercial services to digital leaders globally, particularly as an expert in the deeptech, fintech, smart home industries. In EMEA, he engaged many notable brand name clients as well as many London-based incubators and their fast-growing European startups. Thank you for joining me and Roy. Stay tuned as Roy shares why he describes himself as a techno-optimist. Welcome, Roy Vella, to Hoda's Career Info. I am very excited to have you join me and talk about your work, which to me is very exciting and very innovative. My first question to you, which is a question I ask all guests, would you mind choosing one term that reflects the work that you do and define it from your own perspective?
Sure. So I work in high tech, in technology writ large, whether it's deep tech or fintech or smart home or whatever. And I'd say the most important thing would probably be curiosity. Like I am insatiably curious. I love to learn new things. I would say I firmly believe that there's always more to learn. Like there's no such thing as me having learned everything I need to know about any particular topic. And also from the individual perspective, everyone has different experiences, right? The people are going through different things, and there's always more to learn from their unique experience or perspective. I'll often have calls with folks where at the end of the call, they're like, you just got me. I was just talking the whole time. I don't know anything about you. And it's just because I'm a bit of an inquisitor. I will keep going down the rabbit hole because I'm always like, oh, wait, so how did that happen? So wait, so when you did that, you had mentioned blah, blah, blah. Like I'm just constantly trying to understand the story that they're telling and then reflect on how that's affecting what they're trying to achieve. Sometimes they're not getting the business goal or the personal goal, or they are getting something. And I'm like, how did you do that? Like, I don't understand how that happened. Like, explain to me how that happened, So I would say if I had to choose one word, which isn't very easy to do, but if I had to choose one, it would be curiosity.
Thank you so much for taking on this challenge, Roy. I know it's a tough challenge because you do so much. Yes, you do ask a lot of questions. I felt it right away from our first 5 minutes together, but that's very cool. And I think that is important. My next question to you, and perhaps many people will wonder, how did you get to where you are today? So would you mind sharing with us your story and perhaps embedded with it a message to the audience? If those who are curious about how do we get to do the work that Roy does.
Sure. So I mean, actually, it kind of builds off curiosity, right? So I'm originally from New York. I'm a inner city Brooklyn kid who I'd say I kind of found my heart in San Francisco. So I've got about a dozen years each in New York, the Bay Area, London, and now outside Boston. And I'd say all of that is about curiosity and openness, right? Of openness to a challenge and willing to take a risk and learn more about something I don't know particularly much about necessarily. And I think that curiosity leads you down different paths, right? Where you go, I'm willing to try things and take risks and learn new things all the time. In terms of my path, my brother and I, started companies when we were kids, and that entrepreneurial bug I've had for forever. And so I started a fintech out of grad school and ended up with some classmates from grad school, and then ended up selling that and joining the early days of PayPal. And then PayPal sent me to London, and London was meant to be a year, maybe two, and we fell in love with it and stayed for 12 and got our passports and didn't think we were coming back. But family is probably most important to me, and my in-laws were getting older, and we were like, yeah, we should take the transatlantic flight out of the equation. And so we returned to the States about 6 years ago, outside Boston. So I would say, in writ large, it's about curiosity and being open to experiences and taking risks, being willing to, take risks. And actually, for your younger audience, I would say the risk curve decreases over time. So you're most risk enabled when you're young, and as you get older and older, your expectations change. You like food a certain way, or you get used to things and standards. And then also you get married or have a partner or you have children. Like your ability to take risks is at its peak when you're 15, and it decreases slowly over time. That doesn't mean you can't take risks later on in life. It's just it becomes more risky because there are other people relying on you. You should consider maximum risk taking as early as possible, because the risk of failure is very small, right? You have your family and your friends and other people to support you, and if you personally happen to skip a meal, but if you can't feed your family, that's a different thing, right?
An absolutely important message. Thank you for sharing that one. It's I do feel it as I get older that I'm thinking twice about taking a risk. Whereas younger, it was like, yeah, let's just do it.
Right, exactly.
As you know, I work with young clients. Many who consider themselves digital natives, they know all about technology, but still I find them worried about the future of technology and how it would affect their career journey. So I saw you present at Next Collabs, and I was inspired to think that the future of technology is friendly. But how would you explain the future to my young clients?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm beating the same drum over and over, but it's the same idea that you basically have to be willing to learn and relearn and unlearn, right? Like, the assumptions of how the world is going to work moving forward don't really apply anymore. In fact, a lot of our education, so I have 3 teenagers, right? So I've got a sophomore, senior, and a freshman in college. And, their world is very different than my world. And frankly, a lot of their education, which is a good exercise for the mind, is still industrial age education, right? I mean, I had to buy them Texas Instruments calculators when their iPhones do way more than the Texas Instruments calculator could ever do. But the reality is the pace of change is accelerating and will continue to accelerate. And you saw me speak with Next Collabs. It's about exponential curves. We are on an exponential curve, which for a long time is very flat. But as you enter the elbow, it gets very exciting very quickly. And that pace of change is not going to slow down. And so I would say adaptation and curiosity and being willing to learn new things and going with an open mind and say, when you're either starting something or working with someone, saying, I don't know yet, but I will know. I'm going to practice. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to experiment. For me, it's very much a scientific mindset, understanding how things work. And if you don't know, have a hypothesis and test it, right? Like it's literally about data collection and trial and error and, iteration. And frankly, that's the world we live in. We live in an iterative world where the output from one moment is the input for the next moment, and you just got to keep spinning to learn new things. I don't think technology is going to hurt their future in any way. I'm a techno optimist for sure, but if you want to stand still, it's not going to do good for you, right? Like so it's about understanding and swimming with the current as opposed to trying to plant your feet in the ground and say, no, this is the way I want to do things. Like, if you do that, yes, technology could be very bad for you.
Such a great message. It's about stepping out of our comfort zone too, is, trying new things like you mentioned. My next question is something I noticed on your website. You talk about the mobile wave. Again, if you were to explain this to your children, what does it mean to you?
Sure.
And how has it changed our daily life?
Yeah. I mean, so the mobile wave is really about the fact that, the smartphone is the most deeply and broadly penetrated technology ever. It's actually, it sounds crazy to say, but it is true that there are more mobile phones than toothbrushes on the planet, right? And that mobile technology is not about calling and texting. It is a digital mesh that overlays the entire planet. And it is extremely powerful. Like the chips inside your standard smartphone today far exceed the processing power that put a man on the moon. And it's loaded with sensors. It gives you, geolocation, photography, light sensors, heat sensors. It's got all sorts of information embedded in it. And what that means is that we have, for the first time in human history, almost any individual can contact almost any other individual in real time, live, with video and sound and color and everything else, right? So it's a radical shift in human experience. I mean, my kids can't imagine a world without smartphones, right? And it's really entertaining. Like I say, yeah, we used to pick up people at the airport and nobody had a phone. And they're like, that's impossible. Like, how could that possibly happen? How would two people find each other? And I'm like, well, the world's been working for quite a while, but in their world, all of human knowledge is at the tip of their tongue. Hey, Google, hey, Siri, hey, Alexa, never mind your fingers. You can ask any question about all of human knowledge and it's accessible to you pretty much immediately at high speed. I mean, and again, this is about pace, like the pace of change. AI is a layer on top of that mesh. Now we have a hardware mesh of mobile devices in most hands. Most literate people have a phone, actually. It's like 90% of literate people have a smartphone of some sort, globally. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and you wouldn't have expected it, but it happened very quickly. And why? Because humans are connection machines. We love to connect. We are social creatures. And all that this did was enable us to connect quicker, faster, better. My eldest, I told you, he's a freshman in college right now. He just started school. He's on FaceTime in this house all the time. I'm like, go to college. Like, stop talking to us. But his sisters miss him. We miss him. And it's free, immediate, global. Like, it's not a problem, right? You never disconnect. So it's it's, I would say it's an enabling platform that can be very, very positive. It can be negative too. I mean, like anything else, excess is not good. But largely, it's a massively powerful and positive tool.
I am using it a lot more. Like bit by bit, I'm finding I don't need my wallet anymore because of Apple Pay and,
Totally.
and even for traveling, everything is in there.
Yeah. And you get surprised when they say, no, we don't take Apple Pay. And you're like, oh, hold on. I'll tell you a funny story. And it's a generational thing. My wallet is basically like, I mean, I can show it to you. Like literally, this is my wallet. You can barely see it there. Okay. There's like three or four cards. There's an Apple card and my driver's license, 2 cards. And in the middle, I gotta show this to you because it's entertaining. There's a single $20 bill tucked into the middle of this little thing, which I call my wallet. I showed this to my mother at one point. This is years ago. And she's like, you can't leave the house with $20. Like that's literally, she said, that's unsafe. Like that's not enough money to carry around. And I said to my mom, I'm like, not only do I leave with $20, but this $20, like literally this bill I've had for 2 years at least, maybe longer. Like I don't use cash for anything, and she was, again, this is a generational thing. She was just like, I don't even understand what that means. Like, she's like, I can't, that's impossible. And I'm like, different generation. And I said, and I barely touch the wallet now because what you just said, I'm tapping with my Apple phone or my Apple Watch or whatever, right? Like it's a very different world and it's going to continue like that. Right. I mean, yeah. I mean,
speaking of continuing like that, where do you predict is going to happen? Let's say, I don't know how far you want to go ahead in 10 years, 20 years. What are your thoughts on where is technology taking us besides getting rid of our wallets?
We chose the wrong A. So we say AI, artificial intelligence, and that's the wrong A. Artificial makes it sound fake or not real or not substantial in some way. We should have chosen maybe augmented or accelerated or even alien intelligence, right? Like it's a different sort of intelligence that is an add-on and enhancement to our own. So I would say to all of your clients, if they're not playing with AI, they ought to be playing with it immediately. Like go to ChatGPT, download Poe or any of the platforms and start interacting with it. Because that is the future of human expansion and growth, is that we are going to use AI as an enhancement, as an augmentation, as an acceleration of our own abilities and capabilities. And it's a tool, and it will help you deliver quicker, better, faster in many, many regards, and even just help you think about things better. I would say the other thing is that it's very different than the old world of query response. We are all programmed in a search world. Ask a question to Google, give me an answer, and I want it to be accurate. That is not what this is. This is generative AI, large language models are about giving you a believable answer, a credible answer. It sounds good. It is not meant to be right. It is credibility over accuracy. It is creating answers on the fly. That's super interesting and fun to help your thinking, to creatively think about something and have an interaction. So the important word in ChatGPT is chat. It's an iteration. It's a conversation. It is an interaction with technology that we've never had before. It is not in the beginning when Chat came out, all these people were critiquing the fact that it gave them a wrong answer. I'm like, it's not supposed to give you a right answer. Like, that's not its job. Like it doesn't do spelling very well. It doesn't do math very well. And it's definitely not supposed to give you a right answer. It's supposed to give you a believable answer. And yet it can help you with creativity massively. So, I think the future is humans and augmented intelligence, or AI, artificial intelligence, working together. And by the way, there's proof in chess. AI beat humans in chess, but a human and an AI can beat an AI. And right now, the peak of chess performance is teams of human AI competing with human AI. And those outcomes are unknown. Sometimes this one wins, sometimes that one wins. But if an AI alone can beat a human can't beat an AI. But when you team it up, you get interesting dynamics. And that's the future. We are going to be teaming up on everything we do between someone who's trying to solve a problem and an AI who can enhance it.
That is very cool, and sounds like a lot of fun too. I know I'm enjoying it. Like I was writing my summer newsletter and I said, end of summer. And then I just got all these creative titles. It's like was just chatting with a friend who was like, no, this sounds better,
Yeah. And you that's the other thing, is that it's based on what you're telling it. I want more of this or less of that. I say the other thing, again, my teenagers, I've told them it's going from 0 to 1. So the huge value add at the moment is going from blank page to something. So on the 80-20, it'll get you 80% there. It'll start to write something. You need the 20% of your input and refinement and fixing it. But we humans are super good at that. Reacting and giving you my opinion and editing, no problem. But how many countless human hours have been wasted looking at a blank page, right? That's the eternal story. Getting started. But once the ball starts rolling, oh boy, that unlocks all sorts of creativity, right? So that's what this can do. It can get the ball rolling in whatever you're trying to achieve and help you refine it over time.
Such a great explanation of it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say about AI, just to cap that off, is this is about scale. And unfortunately, human intuition doesn't do scale. We cannot, our intuition around scale is wrong. And I can prove it actually. When I tell people about 1 million, 1 billion, and 1 trillion seconds. 1 million seconds, it's about 12 days, 2.5 weeks, or just about 2 weeks. 1 billion seconds, 32 years. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years. And people go, wait, what? And it's because of English. English makes it seem linear. Million, billion, trillion. It's not linear. It's times 1,000, right? And a computer says, why are you surprised by that? And all humans I talk to go, whoa, I didn't think we would go from weeks to 6 times written history, right? It's like, what? So this is what the computer can do for you, is address problems at scale that you're not so good at, but you can add creativity and novelty and insight that the computer doesn't have, right? It's the difference between scale processing and the way human brains work.
It definitely makes things look more positive the way you're presenting it, and that it's more of nothing to worry about, really.
Yeah, no question. Does it mean so look, on that front about being positive, the world changes all the time. There were an army of guys who shoveled horse shit in New York City. That was their job, because there were a lot of horses, which meant a lot of manure. And the car came around and they were like, wait a minute. I'm like, look, we are in a constant state of evolution and change, and it makes people uncomfortable, and the pace is, changing, and people's roles and jobs will change over time. There's no question about that. And the question is, do you think change is a positive thing or a negative thing? Okay, well, it makes people uncomfortable. I get that, but it's also inevitable. It's like, okay, you don't go and hold back the waves. Tell me, good luck with that. It's inevitable. So you either embrace it and learn how to surf, or you get pummeled. There's kind of no middle ground, unfortunately, which is why I tell them, play, go out and play. You should be playing with ChatGPT or any of the generative Mid-Journey if you're an artist, or there's all these fascinating tools. Most of them you can play with for free for a long time, and see what they do and see what they unlock in you. That's the interesting part.
Yes, I think experimenting with them is definitely a lot of fun too. I find the responses I get, they're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And then, like you said, that taking the time to check it and say what makes sense to me.
Sure. Totally. Completely agree.
course, I went beyond your website to LinkedIn, and I found one of your titles on LinkedIn that you like to think of yourself as a story doctor. Do you mind sharing, what does a story doctor do?
Sure. So I tell people, for all my advanced education, I think improv training was possibly the most valuable. And it's very simple as to why. We have been telling and digesting stories for hundreds of thousands of years. And most of that time, the sun went down, we built a fire, we sit around it, and we told each other stories. And pretty much all of humanity is about storytelling and digesting. And unfortunately, in the modern age, we have become more story receptors than givers. We like to sit and be told a story on television, in a movie theater, in a book, you name it. Like, we have become receptors as opposed to senders. And unfortunately, like most things, if you don't practice it, you get bad at it. And so story doctor is, I interact with a lot of startups. I love the creative problem solving of the startup world. So, mentor, advisor, board member, angel, like I love all that. And I run into a lot of sick stories. I'm like, you are not, like, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? Like, you are not telling me a story that resonates, that I'm going to remember, that I'm going to act on. And I try and help people tell a better story. And improv, by the way, teaches you a bunch of the elements of storytelling, about silence, the power of status, the difference between high status, when you speak, you stand still. Low status tends to move around a lot when you're low status. Touching your face versus not touching your face. Like, there's all these elements that again, human intuition is really good at. We're bad at scale, but we're really good at making assessments of people's storytelling. And on an improv stage, when a character comes out, their stance, their speaking tone, their speaking speed, the way they move their head, there's all these little elements that tells an audience, oh, that's a high status character, that's a low status character. The relationship here is, even though this person's younger, they're higher status than the older person, blah, 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 blah. There's all these dynamics. And it's a thing that we've forgotten. A lot of people have forgotten how to tell a good story, a story that grabs the audience, that keeps their attention, that uses elements and visuals that they will remember, that they can act on. Like, that is, I honestly, again, if your audience is, as you said, sort of between 15 and 25, go take an improv course immediately. I don't care if you're scared. I want you to be scared. That's good. That fear and that adrenaline makes you a better improviser, just so we're clear, right? Like, I mean, but the real key is learning storytelling, because the rest of your life is about telling a convincing story. That's how we get things done. And by the way, it's fundamental to all of life. Politics, storytelling. Money, storytelling. Religion, storytelling. Like, it's all about storytelling, no matter where you go. If you go to education, I don't care what vertical you're in, telling a story is how you achieve. And a convincing story is the secret to success, really, in my opinion. Like, you tell people a story where they start nodding. If you see people nodding, you're telling a good story. If they go like this, that's probably, you need to work on that story a bit more, right? Yeah. So I'm often telling people that, that practicing that art is important in almost any job, in almost any role, in almost any family. Like, we tell each other stories about our own lives to inform their lives, right? And you all know that, right? You have relatives. Yes. You go, hey, Uncle Jim, tell that story about blah, 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 right? That's how we learn things.
Absolutely. And one of the things too, I think story is important when writing resumes as well. Like, it just facilitates 100%. That writing of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing. There's no right answer in storytelling, right? So people say, oh, I don't have this, or I don't have that, or I've never done this, or I've never done that. Nobody cares. Tell me your story. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Like, it really, it's not about ticking boxes. It's about engagement. It's about telling a story where people are part of your story and they go, oh, wow, that's interesting. and or that's I've never had that experience, right? If you enrich someone's life with your story, it doesn't matter what the story is, right? They just want to hear about it.
Such valuable advice, Roy. Thank you so much.
No problem.
These were all the questions I had prepared for you, Roy.
Sure.
If your children were sitting right now, what advice would you give them to wrap up the episode?
Yeah, I would say for me, I'd almost reiterate the ground we've covered, right? Experimentation and curiosity and eagerness to learn, playfulness, like going out and playing with the AI tools and practicing storytelling, getting up in front of audiences of all sorts. It might be an audience of your peers at work. It might be an actual audience. It might be a performance. We're in a constant state of telling stories to one another. And the only way you get better at it is practice. And you learn that though that art, it can only be done through practice, right? So I tell them, and I would tell your audience the same thing, is like try. I mean, I guess the last thought I would leave you with is failure leaves you exactly where you are right now.
Love it. Yes.
90% of the time. I mean, there is some failure that, maybe you overextended and you risk something and you lose something more. But the vast majority of the time, failure of any regard brings you back to where you are at the moment. And so that's not a very high risk when you think of it that way, right? When you start to climb a mountain, you mostly, if you fall back to the ground you started on.
I think, yes, even if you fail, you're better than
and you're even better off. That's true, because the other thing that people miss is the experience, how much they learned in that failure. And I've failed a ton. I mean, everyone has. There's no such thing as like, a perfect race the whole time. You trip, you stumble, you get up, you keep going. Failure. In fact, there's lots of quotes about failure is a better teacher than success, right? And that's definitely true. No question.
Thank you so much for your time, Roy. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
You've been listening to Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. My guest today on Hoda's Career Info was Roy C. Vella. You can connect with Roy on LinkedIn. My conversation with Roy included exclusive topics such as the mobile wave, AI, ChatGPT, improv courses, as well as career tips. I look forward to your feedback in the comments section. Please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to share your feedback in the comments section. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, stay inspired and keep moving forward in constructive ways.